It is exactly 2:17 in the morning when the sound breaks the silence of your bedroom. Your phone rings, vibrating against the wooden surface of the nightstand with a rhythmic, mechanical hum that seems louder than a heartbeat. You do not check the screen. You do not need to look at the display to know who is calling. You just lie there for a long moment, staring up at the dark ceiling as the blue light from the phone flickers against your bedroom walls. You let it ring once, twice, powerfully aware of every second that passes. On the third ring, you finally reach out and pick it up. You do not ask who is on the other line. You do not offer a hello or some tired greeting. You simply press the receiver to your ear and wait in total silence. A voice you have learned to recognize speaks immediately, giving you an address with perfect clarity. There is no explanation offered, no sense of false urgency, and certainly no apology for the hour. Only calm, cold instructions that end with a command. Be there in 20 minutes. Then the line goes dead. Just like that, your night is decided for you. You sit up on the edge of your bed, the cold air hitting your skin, knowing that your choice was made long before the phone actually started ringing. This is your life now, a series of late-night summons and the heavy weight of secrets that you must carry into the dawn. You find your keys in the dark and walk toward the door. Only 3 months ago, your life was incredibly simple. It was not exactly easy, medical work never is, but it was straightforward. You ran a small community clinic that you worked tirelessly to maintain. Long hours and constant paperwork were the norms, but the clinic belonged to you. People in the neighborhood trusted you with their family health needs. You saw kids you treated years ago growing up and waving to you in the streets. You mattered in your world. You saved lives, and for a long time that felt like enough to satisfy you. Then one late night, everything shifted. You were closing up the clinic, exhausted and ready for home, when you realized someone was sitting in your waiting room. You had not heard the heavy door open, nor had you heard any footsteps on the tile. He was just there, watching you with a terrifying stillness. He was not a large man or particularly loud, but his quietness was what made him dangerous. He said your brother's name calmly, almost as if it were a casual fact of nature. He told you how much your brother owed to the wrong people, a debt that does not just disappear. He placed a phone number on your desk and didn't raise his voice or look away. Answer when it rings, he instructed. Anytime, every time. Then he walked out into the night, leaving you with a choice that felt like a trap. You stood there for a long time, looking at that number, thinking of all the people you could call, police or your brother. Instead, you saved it and slowly turned off the lights. Weeks passed with nothing but silence until the night the system actually began. The first call led you to a quiet, upscale neighborhood where the houses were large and the lawns were perfect. But inside, the house was too quiet. The floors were clean, the lights were on, and everything looked normal until someone led you upstairs to a back room. There, a man lay on expensive sheets, shaking and sweating, barely conscious from a massive, neglected infection. You didn't ask questions about how he got the wound or why he wasn't in a real hospital. You simply got to work, because that is what you are trained to do. You fix people. Your hands moved with a mechanical precision, even as your mind raced with the implications of the situation. When the job was finally done and the man's vitals stabilized, someone from the shadows handed you a thick envelope. You hesitated for a second, knowing exactly what taking that payment would mean, but you took it anyway. That was the moment the line disappeared for good. After that night, the calls became a regular occurrence. They took you to different places, private apartments, motel rooms, and rural cabins. Every patient had a different injury, often traumatic and clearly violent, but the silence remained constant. No one explained the backstory. No one needed to explain why you were there instead of a trauma surgeon in a proper hospital. You told yourself it was fine, rationalizing that helping a patient is your primary duty. Deep down, you knew you were entering a territory where the medical rules no longer apply. Slowly, you began to see the patterns. Your brother remained perfectly safe throughout all of this. There were no more threats, no accidents, and no ominous visits to his house or place of work. He lived his life as if he didn't have a giant target on his back, and eventually, the realization hit you. He was fine because you were cooperating. He was the leverage, and as long as you answered the phone at 2 a.m., the wolves stayed away from his door. You became a ghost within your own life. During the day, you were the respected doctor with the friendly clinic. You spoke to patients about their blood pressure and local high school sports. But as soon as the sun went down, you lived in another world where the stakes were life and death for people who probably deserved neither. You found yourself cleaning blood off your surgical kit before opening the clinic in the mornings. The stress began to change you, hardening your responses and making you more observant of your surroundings. You lived with a constant internal monologue, defending your choices to yourself, while knowing that each call you answered made you more integral to their operation. You weren't just a guest surgeon anymore. You were an asset. Your skill was their insurance policy, and you were becoming very good at making sure that policy never failed to pay out. You felt like there was no way out, yet your brother continued to smile, unaware of the hands that were keeping his life together from the shadows. Then one night, the calls shifted from medical assistance to total desperation. They didn't take you to a house or a hidden apartment this time. They drove you far out of town to a warehouse. Inside, someone had spent a fortune building a clandestine operating room. It had bright surgical lights, stainless steel instruments, and modern monitoring equipment that still had the plastic wrap on the buttons. One look told you that it didn't feel right. It was a sterile imitation of safety. That was when you saw your patient, the head of the cartel, bleeding internally and fading fast. You told them it was impossible. You explained the dangers of working in a warehouse instead of a controlled hospital environment with a full staff. They didn't argue or scream, they just handed you a phone, and on the other end was your brother, laughing and talking as if it were a normal Tuesday evening. He didn't know someone was watching him, prepared to act based on your decision. In that horrible moment, the ultimatum was clear without being spoken. He lived only if you picked up the scalpel right there. You stepped forward, pulling on your gloves with shaking hands that you quickly forced into cold silence. Hours ticked by under those unnatural lights. You worked with a focus you didn't know you possessed, because failure meant the death of the only person you had left. Miraculously, the leader survived the procedure against all medical odds, gasping for air on the table. You pulled back, realized that your world was gone, and prepared for whatever came next. Saving the leader was the worst mistake of your professional career. Up until that point, you were useful, but now you were indispensable. They knew you could perform miracles under pressure and in the worst conditions imaginable. The warehouse was upgraded almost immediately with better equipment and more security. It became your second office, a dark reflection of the clinic you ran during the day. You are now the cartel's secret surgeon, a man whose life is partitioned into two irreconcilable halves. In the daylight, you are a healer, a trusted community member, and a savior. At night, you are an architect of survival for the very people who cause the trauma you treat during the day. The phone doesn't just represent a debt anymore. It is the leash that keeps your brother alive and your clinic open. Every time you drive back home as the sun begins to rise, you realize that you no longer save people for the right reasons. You save them because your own survival depends on their heartbeats. The rule is simple and absolute. They cannot die. You aren't just maintaining their health, you are maintaining the machinery of an entire empire. You look at your hands and realize they are still the same hands that heal children, but now they carry the weight of every shadow you have worked in. You are the man who answers when the darkness calls, and as long as the phone rings at 2:17 a.m. in the silence of your room, you know exactly what your future holds. You have become the person you never thought you could be, and there is no coming back from the dark.